joint work with several other co-authors, Jason Shui, Gabriel Magno, Ivandro Cunha, Virgilio Almeida, and Gabriel and Ivandro are also at this conference, so afterwards, if anyone has questions, we should also talk with them. How many of you are familiar with the right to be forgotten? How many of you've probably heard about it in the news media? What we're going to do first is briefly go over the motivation and how it's implemented, and then we're going to get to our main findings. So this does not seem to be going forward here when I click my... I can't move this here.
Just the arrows.
Here. Okay, now it's working. Okay, great. So, unfortunately, I can't see it on the screen, though, but I guess that's okay. I'll just look up at it here.
Yeah, it's not mirrored.
Okay, all right. I'll have to just step back then. So, the motivation behind the law is that when someone Googles your name, and maybe they Google your name, and the first link that comes up when they Google your name is an article about a crime that you perhaps committed 20 years ago. Or perhaps it's a crime for which you were acquitted. Or perhaps something, a minor crime that you did when you were very young, when you were a teenager. Or maybe it's just some personal private information, such as your home address or your social security number. If that situation happens, then what can you do? There's, in the past, there's not much you could do but cry. But fortunately, the European Union came along a few years ago and created this so-called right to be forgotten law, which imposes restrictions on search engines. And so in particular, it works as follows. Well, first, the process works as follows. First of all, it began in 2014, and what you do is, if you want to have something removed, something forgotten from a search engine, you go to, say, Google, and you fill out an online form where you provide information like your name, the URL you want removed, the reason why you want it to be removed, and the country you live in. And then there's a committee at Google based in Dublin that decides whether that request should be approved or not. And according to the Google website, the Google transparency site, the committee makes this decision based on whether it's private or sensitive information, it's content that relates to, so they'll go ahead and honor the request if it's private or sensitive information, if it's content that relates to minors, if it's a minor crime occurring when the requester was a minor, and also often for acquittals, exonerations, and spent convictions. And Google also may decline to delist it if it determines the page contains information which is not publicly available. So how does Google go about implementing this law? So, or not just Google, any search engine. The way it basically works is that if Google accepts your request, then if someone goes in now and searches your name, that link will no longer appear. This only applies to European properties of Google. We'll talk about Google.com in a second. But on the other hand, suppose that that it has to do, so if John Doe made this request and then you search John Doe, you'll no longer see the link. But let's suppose now that it has to do with John Doe taking a trip to Shanghai. If your query is trip to Shanghai, then the link will still appear. So Google only removes the link if the query includes the name of the requester. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as we get into the study here. One important thing to keep in mind also is that the right to be forgotten law does not affect any original content. So if it's an article that appeared, for example, in the Daily Mail or in El Mundo or any European newspaper, and the Google honors a request to have the link forgotten, the content still exists in the web at the in the publisher's website. And finally, one last thing is currently, there's some debate about this right now, but currently all the links remain on google.com. So that even though the links have been removed from google.es, google.uk, google.fr, the links are still there in google.com. Well, one other point to make here also is that when Google does remove a link, it notifies the publisher. So for example, if it removes a link that points to an article that was published in the Daily Mail, then Google will send an email to the webmaster of the Daily Mail indicating that this link has been removed. So all the newspapers know exactly which links have been removed and have not been removed. However, Google does not, when Google does make this notification, it does not indicate who the requester is. It only provides the URL to the webmaster. So what has been the effect of this law? First of all, there's been over 1.5 million links that have been removed for individuals in the European Union, and approximately 43% of the requests, 43% of the requested URLs have been removed. So there's been 1.5 million requests for URLs, and 43% of them have been removed. So I don't know if I'm going to belabor this too much. I think I'm going to be short on time, but just mention that there is a debate ongoing. There's a lot of work, a lot of papers in the legal theory venues discussing, debating about the right to be forgotten versus free speech issues. And so, for example, it's very unlikely that such a law could be fully passed in the United States because the United States has very, very strong censorship issues, and this can be regarded as a form of censorship from some perspectives. The other issue is that it demonstrates limits of national privacy laws in a world of transnational data flows. And in particular, the French Data Protection Authority, CNIL, has ordered Google to delist links from all of its geographic properties, including google.com. And right now, Google is resisting that. They have taken some measures in that direction, but they haven't fully honored the requests of CNIL. And currently, this issue is, it's most likely that this issue is going to have to be resolved in court. Okay, so now we're going to finally get to our own contribution here. And this is a data-driven study of the right to be forgotten. We believe this is one of the first papers to address the right to be forgotten from a data perspective. There's been quite a bit of work on the subject in the legal community, as I mentioned earlier. And we'd like to hope that the results of this paper can inform the debate and future evolution of the RTBF law. So the main result that we want to get to today is this possibility that the right to be forgotten can be attacked. And what we mean by attacking the right to be forgotten is as follows. With moderate resources and hacking skills, a transparency activist can determine delisted URLs and the names of the people who requested the delistings. The activist can then republish those URLs and the names on his or her own website. And finally, by doing that, this could lead to the so-called Streisand effect. And the Streisand effect is a term that's often used in the privacy community, which means when someone tries to hide, remove, or censor information, inadvertently, that it makes the information even more visible, and then people see it even more. So the main argument we want to make here is the right to be forgotten in some situations, instead of helping someone hide what they want to have hidden, it can actually make it more well known. Some additional results that we're going to get into is that we also analyzed 283 known articles that have been delisted. and we look at, in fact, I'm just going to jump into that right away here. So there's as I mentioned earlier, when Google delists a URL, it notifies the webmaster. And so, a number of media sources in the UK have gone ahead and republished all those URLs in its newspaper. So you can just go to these websites. You can go to the BBC, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, and the Guardian, and get actually a list of articles that have been delisted for their newspapers. So, and for some reason, it's only the UK that does this. We don't know of any other newspaper in any other European country that does this, but for whatever reason, this is happening in the UK. So this is just a summary of our data set. We have 283 known delisted URLs. We can see that the URLs, most of them are between year 2000 and 2012. The typical size of an article is 400 to 600 words. What's important here in this study is the number of names that are mentioned in each article, and we see that typically, there's only one name is mentioned in an article. On average, 2.1 names are mentioned in any one article in our data set. And so the first thing we did was a manual topic analysis of these articles. We just sat and read the articles and then classified the articles into different categories. And we found that these were the topics that were included in the articles. So they range from sexual assault to financial misconduct to pedophilia. So many of them have to do with sexual misconduct, sexual related issues. Many of them have to do with financial issues as well, but some also deal with things like spying, terrorism, drugs as well. Then what we did is we also used the latent Dirichlet allocation method to also automatically analyze the topics in these 283 articles. And latent Dirichlet allocation is an unsupervised generative machine learning technique that's very popular now for analyzing text. And we came up, when we did this, we came up with some similar results. These are the top 8 topics that were discovered in the corpus. And the top topic was dealing with violent crime. The second one was with drunk driving. Third one, domestic drug use, murder, prostitution, financial misconduct, and sexual assault. Great. Okay, so I want to go over these attacks. These attacks we feel are probably the most important contribution of this work. And the attacks were somewhat inspired by this data-driven study that we just went over. And so the first one is, given that you know that a URL has been delisted, so suppose you know that a particular URL is delisted, how can we determine what person made the request for that URL? And the attack is quite straightforward. You just take the delisted article, read the article and determine all the names in the article, and then for each name, you query Google. Let's say again, it's been delisted in some UK newspaper. You query Google UK with name and article title. And if the article URL, when you look at the results, if the article URL is not listed, then you know that that particular name is indeed the requester, because that's how the right to be forgotten law works, and that's how it's even on Google's transparency page, it says that this is basically the process. So a very, very simple attack there to determine who is the requester of a particular delisted article. So we were able to do a demographic study on that. I won't say too much. We found that 87.5% of the requesters are male. And we also were able to, just by reading the articles, we were able to determine often their ages and their professions. I'm going to skip this for lack of time. Now we're going to get into the main attack that I want to emphasize here. That attack that we think puts the right to be forgotten in question to some extent. Okay, and the attack is again fairly straightforward. And here what we want to do now is try to determine previously unknown delisted links and the requesters for those delisted links. Because if I'm a transparency advocate, and if I can do that, very easily determine delisted links and the requesters for those delisted links, then I can create a website and publish all that material there. And, and now people can just go to my website and check to see if I have any articles that were delisted. And in fact, there already exists one website called Hidden from Google that does something like that. They didn't use our attack to do that. They just gathered links again from those that were republished in the news media. But there is already an existing site that's existed for several years now doing that. So the attack is as follows. It's a divide and conquer attack where you pick one newspaper at a time. So for example, you might pick El Mundo, the Spanish newspaper, and you crawl and download all the digital articles of El Mundo. So you first go ahead and you crawl all the articles. It's not very hard to do that. These newspapers are not very sophisticated. You can usually do that. Some newspapers provide all their articles on a CD. And then you put all the articles in a database and you search on terms related to topics typically requested for removal. And then from those articles, automatically collect all the names mentioned. You can use automated tools, automated natural language processing tools to extract the names from all the articles. And then you write a script that puts each name and article title into google.es and then checks for the links that are returned. And once again, if for any of these articles, if the article URL is not listed, then the URL is delisted and the name is the requester. So the attack is as straightforward as that. And we didn't want to attack all the newspapers in the European Union, but we did do a small case study here, proof of concept with El Mundo. So let me actually just jump to that real quick here. So what we did, and Gabriel, who's in the audience, who is the person who carried this out, so we queried El Mundo with 37 Spanish terms related to crime and downloaded 85,000 articles. And then we automatically extracted all the names from those articles. And then to reduce the query effort, we used heuristics to filter the queries. We didn't want to send to Google too many queries. We were concerned that we'd be blocked, or we also were concerned about the ethical issues. So we ended up with 6,410 queries. Each query is, again, a combination of article title and name of requester. And then we sequentially queried Google ES from a single machine. We just used a single machine based in Brazil to query Google ES. And then doing that, we discovered two delisted links that were previously unknown. And after that was done, we went ahead and double checked to make sure that those links are there somewhere in Google. And so we checked querying Google ES with the title only and Google.com with the name of the requester. And in both cases, in all cases, the links would come up. Okay, so let me just then just conclude this last slide. And so basic conclusion is that RTBF can be broken for links to news media. We see no apparent defense to this. Attack remains valid if RTBF is extended to google.com. The other point that I think is an important point to emphasize is that even if this attack is valid and its right to be forgotten, in our opinion, still serves an important role. And that is that 95% of the URLs that are requested to be removed are URLs for personal private information. This is something that's not emphasized in the news media at all. But if you dig down into it, you find out this is a truth. So most of the requests are for things like, I don't want my phone number to be publicly known or my email address to be publicly known. And that information is typically not in news articles, but it's instead in social media, such as Facebook or YouTube or something of this sort. And it's much harder to uncover the delisted links for those social networks, mostly because there's just so much content out there. and it would just be very, very computationally expensive to be able to perform that. And I'll just mention just very briefly that we've done an earlier study also questioning the COPA law, and we also showed in that case that that particular law also has the effect of reducing one's privacy sometimes rather than enhancing it. Stop there.